Last weekend, racist and Islamophobic riots spread across England and Northern Ireland, following online misinformation about the perpetrator of the Southport stabbings. And yesterday, the country was braced for more, after a provocative list containing the locations of immigration lawyers' offices, and in one case, a home address, had been circulated amongst far-right groups on Telegram. One of these firms was in Walthamstow, where, when we arrived, local businesses were boarded up in preparation for a potential night of unrest. But rather than the far right, thousands of counter-protesters, anti-racists and anti-fascists, demonstrating peacefully, flooded the borough's streets. Behind much of the mobilisation of counter-protesters was Stand Up to Racism. Here's Wayman Bennett, co-convener of the organisation.
Scumbags come out of the sewer, and they don't come out alone. They come out with Trump. They come out with Le Pen. They come out with the AFD.
To be honest, fascists are cowards. Tommy Robinson's a coward. Nigel Farage is a coward, all right? They can only pick or bully people if they think that they can make them cower.
I mean, police were asking counter-protests not to come out tonight because they were afraid of violence. Are you afraid that things could get violent here?
Well, my view is these are our streets. Why should I stay at home? The violent people are the Nazis, yeah? And what's happening is people are making sure that the Nazis don't come and dominate these streets. I don't believe that there's going to be violence unless the fascists turn up, right? But as I said, it's a febrile atmosphere. But where there has been violence, I have a friend who's in Rotherham, and they tried to burn down the hotel that he was in with his children. That's what is real violence. Us standing here saying we stand in solidarity isn't violence, it's called solidarity. And we need more of it, not less of it. My mother was a nurse. She came here in the 1960s and she got an invitation from a man called Enoch Powell because he was at that time the head of the health ministry and they had nobody here to look after their sick and their people. She nursed all her life. She worked for the something called the National Health Service, right? Now, that generation is being demonised for why there are no houses or no anything like that. Yet the previous government stole billions from the coffers and they say we can't find it. There's something called PPE scandal in which billions were stolen and they still can't find it. If one of the people around here stole £50, they'd put them in jail. But there's no Tory, there's none of those people that were responsible for that, none of them been held responsible. And that's why we think that we have to stand in unity to make sure don't blame the wrong people.
Earlier, we spoke to his colleague, Joe, who explained why counter-protesters had chosen to ignore police advice to stay home to avoid potential violence.
I don't think you can just ignore fascists and they go away. In my opinion, you have to come out and stand up against them. And in 2012 in Walthamstow, the Fascist English Defence League attempted to come and march here, and we were told at the time by the council and the police that we shouldn't march, that we should just ignore them. And we said to them, actually, history tells us a very different lesson. History tells us it's important to stand up and defend your communities. It's important to stand up and not allow far-right thugs to go on pogroms against refugees, immigrants, black people, brown people, Asian people, Muslim people. It's just not okay to allow these people to rampage through our communities and cause terror. We're not prepared to have that.
The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was asking MPs not to post on social media to avoid encouraging people to come to counter-protests. What do you make of that?
I think it's a mistake. I think it's an absolute mistake, and I think whilst I hear from the Labour government that they are taking this seriously and that people are going to feel the full force of the law, what I don't hear from them is a condemnation of racism and Islamophobia, and they need to stand up and start saying it. So it's all very well for them to tell us how we should live our lives, but actually what are they doing to stand up to racism? What have they done to challenge what the Conservatives say about refugees, migrants and Muslims? They need to say a little bit more rather than telling us that we shouldn't come out and stand with our brothers and sisters in our communities and defend our rights.
Many people had travelled from out of the borough, but many were Walthamstow locals. Well, you guys live here, we're in front of your house, and we're watching what's going on in the street in front of us. What do you make of it all?
So far, it's peaceful. I'm glad to see my community out, all standing shoulder to shoulder with each other in unity, because we won't be told how we can live and who we can live with.
Yeah. The EDL tried to come here 12 years ago. They were seen off. No violence, just seen off. They are not welcome here. You can see there's Muslims having prayers in the street. It's great.
Abdul and his friend Tom, a local historian, are also residents of North East London.
I've got friends and family around here, and I just obviously it's supporting them as well as obviously the wider, greater cause. You know, stand up to racism, stand up to bigotry, stand up to fascism. You know, all those elements that are the worst of society, in any society. You know, and it can be done, as you can see, God willing, peacefully. You know.
Can you explain how it felt to see immigration lawyers to see lawyers firms in your neighbourhood being targeted by the far right online?
Well, it's an attack. They talk about attack on democracy. They talk about Muslims not integrating, inverted commas. You know, yet they are attacking the very institutions that they believe they are trying to uphold. You know, so there's a lot of things we can say that be food for thought. You know, and I mean, my heart really goes out to those 3 girls that were killed, murdered. You know, and how do you pay your respects to families like that? By going on a rampage? You know, by destroying people's homes, livelihoods? You know, is that what our values are? They're not. They're certainly not our values. And this fringe, which is at the moment a fringe, unfortunately has a platform. And this platform, I believe, has been given oxygen. You know, it's a fire. And what do fires do when oxygen is given? Becomes a blaze. And from a blaze it becomes a inferno. And I hope to God that doesn't become the case, because I'm sure in our country we've got many more people who are sensible as opposed to fringe who are not. And amongst the fringe, I would turn out and I would say, you know, those who have only been caught up in a wave should stand back and reflect, you know, because that's one of the greatest gifts we've been given, intellect.
Can I ask, why do you think that these riots spread so quickly and got so violent?
I don't know why they spread so quickly or become so violent. I mean, I know, as we were discussing before, we're seeing a cycle repeat itself. So there's a kind of intellectual leadership in this country, which is the politicians and the media, and they are in some ways responsible for what's happening. So I'm a curator of a local history museum. The current project we're looking at is racism in the 70s. It's a very similar set of ingredients that brought about the most racist time in this country's living memory. And we're kind of seeing it again. We're seeing that irresponsibility in the media and in some elected members of parliament too. And that emboldens people. It's called Gunnersbury Park Museum.
Can I ask, at Gunnersbury Park Museum, as a historian, what are the sort of similarities you're seeing between the National Front in the 70s and what we're seeing on our streets today?
Yeah, so there's some really chilling similarities. One is the targeting of people who've got migrant backgrounds when they're kind of vulnerable, like when they're staying in hotels, for example, when they're not in the hearts of their communities, when they're somewhat isolated. That's one chilling similarity. The other thing is that these people doing these intimidating attacks, they're often not from the area. They're often travelling some distance to attack or to intimidate. Those are two really big similarities.
It was clear that the planned march of the EDL on Walthamstow in 2012 and the activity of the National Front in the 1980s remained at the forefront of the community's collective memory. Walthamstow is, unfortunately, not unfamiliar with racist violence. In 1981, an arson attack on a family home, occurring amidst a spate of similar attacks targeting British Asian households, took the life of a mother and her 3 children. I spoke to TSSA union organiser Ricky Jones about discovering resurgent imagery of the National Front on British trains.
Yesterday, our members noticed on one of the C2C trains stickers, and they went on the trains to remove the stickers. Now, the stickers had National Front on them. National Front Rights for Whites was on the stickers. When they peeled off the sticker, behind it was stuck a razor blade. And not only was it on the stickers, they found them in between seats where people sit. Now, the disgraceful thing about that is they're not just targeting people with multiculturalism. They're targeting women. They're targeting children. They're targeting babies. We're talking about the summer holidays when those trains are packed with people going on their holidays or going down to the coast, and they've got to be faced by razor blades stuck between seats. It's disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. So what sparked that off for me was in '67 was when the National Front started to rise. In the early 70s, I was a young boy going on demonstrations against the National Front, and it's shocking to see that we've got National Front stickers on trains yesterday, so many years on. At the moment, we're facing a situation where we've not just got the Tommy Robinsons for the English Defence League, we've got the National Front and many, many other fascist groups coming up. And let's not forget Nigel Farage. They may have 5 MPs in Parliament, but they are completely racist. They're a completely racist party who've done a fantastic job of pulling the wool over our young people's eyes and making them believe they're a good party that only want to close the borders.
However, when recounting this story to the crowd, Jones added the following.
We've got children and women using those trains. It's during the summer holidays. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all.
He has since been suspended from the Labour Party and arrested by the Met on suspicion of encouraging murder. The Met is systemically racist, according to the Casey report. However, the way in which they police unrest and their attitudes towards targeted communities does differ today from the 1970s and 80s. I spoke to Aslan, who was handing out water to officers.
I've been here for a few hours, went to the shop to get myself a drink, and I thought, you know what, there must be other people that are thirsty as well. So I thought, let me just try getting a drink for everyone.
What's the reaction been like from the police?
To be honest with you, they're here. The thing is, I feel sorry for them. The biggest thing is, I feel sorry for them. It's just, they can't do anything. They have limited powers. They're there, they're getting attacked. I've seen videos online and we feel bad for them.
What's it been like watching those videos online of those riots?
It's scary. I've got 2 daughters. One of my daughters is 3 years old. One of them is 2 months old. And it's scary. I think a lot of the times, not a lot of the times, all the times, it's all about deterrence. So it's just about letting people know that we're here. We don't want to get violent. We're here to obviously serve our community. That's the only thing we're here. Like, we're scared now. We're literally scared. I was on the phone to my missus a little while ago. She didn't know I'm here, but she saw a TikTok a little while ago. Somebody was streaming on TikTok. My missus, she found out I'm here and she's having a go at me. She's like, why are you there? And I was like, listen, I'm like, at the end of the day, I can't sit in my house scared. Like, I need to get out, and that's the only reason I'm here.
The way in which, if any, these riots and counter-protests will change Britain is yet to be seen. And whether they could happen again will largely depend on the actions of this government. Last night, there was none of the rioting, looting, or attacks on the police that far-right demonstrators carried out on British towns over the past weekend. In some places, like Aldershot and Brighton, the far-right presence did materialise. However, they were vastly outnumbered. There might be hundreds of far-right thugs, as Keir Starmer would call them, but there are thousands of Brits willing to take to the streets against them.